I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to quadruple down. This seems to be a tried and true strategy whenever you get canceled. So I just wanted to explain what I mean when I say Apple products are pretty fairly priced for what you get. This is something I tweeted that I have gotten the most negative response to out of anything I've ever said, genuinely, I think, in my entire life. And I believe this 100% still. And it's for 4 reasons that I've written down and thought about. Number 1, it's the experience that you get with the products. Number 2, it's the build quality and durability. Number 3, it's the integration and the workflow. And number 4, it's because of the rock solid privacy. These are why I think Apple products are fairly priced for what you get. And I want to start off with number 1. Let's just talk about the experience. I have used so many different pieces of technology over the years. I started on Windows. My first phone was a Samsung flip phone, and I've tried so many Android phones. I've tried so many different PCs over the years. And every time I use those devices for whether it's a day or an extended period of time, they fall short. They don't feel very tight. They don't feel reliable, and there's no consistency across them. How I do something on one computer is totally different than the Android phone and vice versa. And it's hard for me to enjoy what I'm doing. Like, I can get stuff done. There's no question that the world, I think, still way predominantly works on Android and Windows. But if we're talking about the way it feels to use it, the experience on Apple products, I just don't know how you can argue is worse than on an Android. What I'm not saying is that you can customize Apple products more, that they are as consumer friendly as far as like having USB-C on the products as Android phones. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the experience, picking one of these products up and using them, simply put, it just isn't as pleasant or reliable. And this is directly connected to my second point here, which is that when you buy an Apple product, the build quality and the durability in general is also way better than anything else you can buy. I think at this point, I've probably touched or owned at least 100 Apple products in my life, and there have only been a couple that have let me down. I remember my iPhone 6S had a bug battery. I don't like the iPad mini because it just doesn't feel built well and the software doesn't scale right on there. I'm trying to think of another point. Oh, the MacBook Pros in 2016 were a disaster. They weren't good. They were a huge step back. There have been missteps with the quality of Apple's products along the way. I'm certainly not going to sit here and say that Apple products have always been perfect, but I'm saying that these MacBook Pros and iPad minis are exceptions to the rule. That in general, buying an Apple product, you have a way higher chance of a long-lasting durable product. To be clear, that's not to say that Samsung and Lenovo and LG don't make some great products, but I feel like the difference between their best stuff and their worst stuff is massive. There's a really common middle ground with Apple that is genuinely consistent and reliable. And again, it's just not something I see from the products that other companies do. When Apple does something, they almost always do it well or the best. Sometimes they miss, but in general, they do it the best. Moving on to my third point here about the integration and the workflow that you get with Apple products with the ecosystem. It is really dependent on owning multiple products. If you only own an iPhone and no other Apple product, if you only own an iPad and no other Apple products, or only own a MacBook and no other Apple products, the value that you get is not going to be as great as the sum of everything together. Because when you have an iPhone, you take a picture, it's on your Mac and photos in seconds. You have AirPods, they sync up and you can switch between your iPhone and your Mac and your iPad automatically. When you buy any number of Apple products more than one, the experience just keeps getting better and better, especially if they're products in different categories. So owning multiple iPhones isn't going to be that much of a jump, but owning an iPhone and an iPad, well, now all your web results sync on both your browsers. All your photos on one are going to be on the other. All your messages sync up. You get AirDrop where you can send specific things if you want to from there to then a Mac. AirPods switch seamlessly between them. Apple's just nailed that in a way that it kind of confuses me that no other company has tried to build that out. There's just not a single company where I feel like Google could do this or Samsung. They could try to make something like this. And nobody has, when it's so clearly the reason that Apple products just have this insane experience. That's why I think they're pretty fairly priced for what you're getting, because the sum of them together is just so good. I do want to narrow down this point being about workflow though, and that for me is top tier. It saves me so much time, and I genuinely cannot put a financial number on the work hours Apple products have saved me, which is where so much of the value comes from. It's like, yeah, I could do it on PC. I could do it with an Android phone, and yeah, it's cheaper initially, but the savings I'm getting and the peace of mind and lack of stress I have is worth it. Like it's so worth it. And rounding things out, my fourth and final point here is the privacy protections that Apple affords their users. There have been things that they have missed on in the past. Again, so much of my video I'm trying to illustrate is not that Apple is this perfect company without flaws that should be seen as this infallible entity, right? They're a corporate giant. They make mistakes. They do things that are unethical. But compared to every other company where they make their lines in the sand, the things that they really care about, like the build quality and the experience and the privacy, you just cannot get from any other company of their caliber. I've experienced over the years that my data has a better chance at being safe and private with Apple products than with anyone else. Again, there are some cases when Apple shares it and they do send it to servers, and there have been security breaches in the past. But compared to my data everywhere else, it's been better with Apple. And I genuinely believe them as well. They casually went to war with Facebook last year by introducing app tracking transparency. They didn't have to do that. But what we got was the ability to say no to being tracked. Or if you want to be tracked, then say yeah. Like, give people the choice. And I just really appreciate that Apple does give us that choice more than other companies on tracking and data. And if you don't believe me, if you really think Apple's just lying and this is just some fake facade that they've put on because it's good for marketing, which it absolutely is, just look at Siri. Like, Siri sucks, man. If Apple was really collecting all this data and didn't care about privacy, I think Siri would be a lot better, because Amazon does this and Google does this and their voice assistants are amazing. But when Apple collects data, they do it in a different way that is more focused around you, even if it means the quality of some of these things suffer. And like, personally, I would be willing to give up more data to make Siri better. You can do that. You can share audio recordings with Siri. You can give Apple that consent if that's something that's important to you, but you don't have to. Where other companies just take it and it's not an option in the first place. So in summary, yeah, I stand by this tweet. Apple products are pretty fairly priced for what you get. I can't find a single company in the world that has all four of these things together: build quality, experience, integration, and privacy protections. There's no one that does all four of those better than Apple. If there is, I'll change my mind. But right now, nothing that I've seen is there. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. Last note as well is I live in the United States. I know that in other parts around the world, the prices have scaled higher than they used to be because of inflation and currency rate exchanges. I'm not an expert on that. So yeah, I get if the products would be twice as expensive where I live, how this can get a little bit murky. But for me, as somebody, one of the 300 million of us that live in the United States, yeah, they're pretty fairly priced. And I think in a lot of other countries, even with some price increases, I'm saying some products, I would disagree that they're fairly priced. But overall, again, like the general rule of thumb, what you're getting is extremely fair for what you're paying. Okay, thanks for watching. Love you guys. Bye-bye.